Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And good evening. You're with me, Dr. Husni Mohd Amin, Senior Research Officer at IKIM Center for Science and Environment Studies, or short as KIAS. Following this program, Great Works of the Muslim World, produced by Mazlinah Ismail on Radio IKIM. So, the Tarikh Baghdad is a hadith-based history of Baghdad written by Abu Bakr Ahmad ibn Ali, a Shafi'ite hadith scholar and historian, more commonly known as Al-Khatib Al-Baghdadi, born in the year 1002 and died in the year 1071. As Baghdadi's magnum opus with a substantial topographical introduction, it is an encyclopedia containing the biographies of more than 8,000 theologians, poets, jurists, and intellectuals. So today we are joined by Dr. Khairil Husaini bin Jamil, Assistant Professor at Abdul Hamid Abu Sulaiman Kuliah of Islamic Revealed Knowledge and Human Sciences, International Islamic University Malaysia, IIUM, who will be sharing with us about this great work. So, Dr. Husaini, I welcome you to Great Works of the Muslim World.
Thank you, Dr. Husni, and thank you, IKIM, for the invitation.
Yeah, you are very much welcome in this our program of ours. So, Dr. Husaini, what can maybe you like to introduce? What do you teach at IIUM, and maybe is there some great projects that you are working on currently?
Of course, thank you again. I'm currently an assistant professor at the Department of Quran and Sunnah Studies.
Right.
As mentioned previously, Abdul Hamid Abu Sulaiman Kuliah of Islamic Revealed Knowledge and Human Sciences. Both are in one faculty, and I'm teaching subjects related to what we can call as scriptural sciences, basically Quran, sciences of Quran, sciences of Hadith, meaning the ulum Quran and ulum Hadith, and also all courses derived from the knowledge of Quran and Hadith. Now, with regard to the research, I'm currently on a number of research works, but maybe one of the most interesting one is to study Al-Jilani, Abdul Qadir Al-Jilani's in the dimension of Hadith in the scholarship of Sheikh Abdul Qadir Al-Jilani, and also a study of Maqasid from the perspective of Hadith studies.
Right. Thank you. That sounds fascinating. Maybe one of these days we'll like to bring you again on the show to talk about this kind of work. But all right, let's go to our topic today. So, what could you tell us about Al-Khatib Al-Baghdadi, and maybe a little bit of his background?
Thank you again, Dr. Husni. Al-Khatib Al-Baghdadi, of course, when I was invited to this program, and the title is Great Works of the Muslim World, I'm reminded of Al-Khatib Al-Baghdadi as some scholars put it, he was the Imam al-Dunya fi zamanihi. I mean, he's the Imam of this world, or of course, the Muslim world during that time, and given that Baghdad was the capital, the Abbasid capital, so he was one of the great scholars during his time, and he was known in the West for his historical work, but also he was also a great muhaddith, and particularly we can call him as a hadith theorist, where he composed works on usul of hadith, verification and validation, and everything related to the hadith criticism. So this Al-Khatib Al-Baghdadi, he was known as Al-Khatib Al-Baghdadi, and interestingly, he was known by that tegonym. By that title, Al-Khatib, not because
Yeah.
he was a khatib, but it was the eloquency of Al-Khatib that
I see.
makes him known as Al-Khatib. And as I mentioned as previously, that he was Shafi'ite from his early childhood. That some have attributed or associated him with Hanbalite.
Yeah.
Mostly, if you do a search on the internet, you find that some would say that he is from the Hanbalite, but um, uh, based on my research, he was a Shafi'ite since a very early childhood. I
So
think that
there wasn't a shift between Hanbali madhab to Shafi'ite madhab.
no, there wasn't a shift from Hanbalite to Shafi'ite. Uh, Maybe the idea that he was previously a Hanbalite came from the type. I mean, when he was said that he belongs to Ashabul Hadith, and Hanbalite was usually known as Ashabul Hadith. So when people say that
Mhm.
Al-Khatib was amongst the Ashabul Hadith, and later on he spoke on some issues related to fiqh and a bit of kalam, and
Mhm.
people said he was amongst the Ashabul Hadith, and later on he shift to another madhab. Okay,
Mhm.
so that could be the reason why people said that he was a Hanbalite and turned Shafi'ite. But based
Ah,
on my research, he was a Shafi'ite since a very early childhood. His first teacher, his muaddib, was a Shafi'ite scholar. He learned at a Shafi'ite mosque, and also he attended the first lesson in Hadith. I mean, the teacher was a Shafi'ite scholar, and he was involved in the Ta'liqat tradition,
mhm.
the Al-Muzanis Ta'liqat, and that really shows that he belongs to the Shafi'ite school. And
Yeah.
that is one of the interesting features of the biography of Al-Khatib. You see the Ta'liqat tradition. You can learn about the Ta'liqat tradition before the emergence of Madrasah, particularly Nizamiyah of Baghdad.
Yeah. I wonder if this claim that he was originally a Hanbalite owes to the milieu of the time, because that time was quite a turbulent time. There was a threat externally and internally, and I think in our previous episodes, particularly since you mentioned about Nizamiya, we came to be discussing about we were discussing about the time of Nizam al-Mulk, the time of Imam al-Ghazali,
Yes.
where there had been, I mean, tussle between followers of the Madhahib. So I was wondering if this claim that he shifted madhab was because of the time. Well, you said that Al-Khatib Al-Baghdadi. Well, we know that even after he has died, people owe it to him. In I think in some of the biography that I've read, many of those owe a great deal of the foundation of their disciplines to Al-Khatib Al-Baghdadi. So therefore, because he's established name, so therefore this claim that he shifted is because some of these followers of Madhab, they want to lay a claim upon him just to share in some of this prestige. What say you about that?
Yeah, yeah, of course. I mean, there were anecdotes that and I can share, but
Yeah.
I think that the time limit will not permit us to go further into the polemics.
Yeah.
But of course, towards the end of his time, you can see the emergence of the madrasa and the Nizamiya, and also the case of Ibn al-Qushayri, and all of those. We can learn a lot from those anecdotes and those accounts on the we can say like the encounter, or the exchanges between the Shafi'ites and the Hanbalites, that we can also say that it continues to our time, the
Yeah.
the Hanbalites and the Shafi'ites. And interestingly, I would say that Al-Khatib was trying to be in the middle, to be moderate in that sense. And you can see that he composed a manaqib of Ibn Hanbal, and he also has the manaqib of Shafi'i. So he composed on both great figures. And when he spoke in his Al-Faqih wal-Mutafaqih, he addressed the mutakallim as well as the fuqaha. So you can see that there are tensions between the Shafi'is and Hanbalis, the mutakallimun and the fuqaha. And I see from his writings that he was trying to address all of them, trying to bring all of them to a middle ground, that we can agree on the certain issues. And it was interesting. It was interesting to see that when you look at many of his works. For another example, he didn't compose only on ilm, but he also wrote on amal, al-amal. So that balance between knowledge and practice, and so on and so forth. I mean, many other examples that I can bring, but we may need another session for that.
Yeah, I'm sure of that. So, all right, Dr. Hussaini. So, besides Tarikh Baghdad, what other works did Al-Khatib Al-Baghdadi produce in his lifetime that we may, mention here?
Yeah, Al-Khatib was quite prolific, and there were a number of biographers who studied his, or who tried to collect information on his works, whether they have been already published, or they are still in the manuscript forms. But based on my study on Al-Khatib, I've come to 90 and plus, 90 plus
It's
numbers.
there's a big number. Yeah.
A big number, and some of them are like the only work in that area, particularly in hadith sciences. For instance, you can see it for each sub discipline in hadith studies, in hadith sciences, he will compose one dedicated work. So that what Ibn Hajar also said about him, like every single subtopic in hadith studies, he would have a work on that. But some of the like renowned or famous works, like Sharaf Ashab al-Hadith, and I believe it is a sort of a responsa to Al-Jahiz word that the Mu'tazilites were Ashraf Ahl al-Hikmah, the Ashraf Ahl al-Hikmah, the nobles of people of wisdom. So Al-Khatib wrote Sharaf Ashab al-Hadith, the nobility of partisan or Hadith folks. I think this has been translated by our friend Dr. Muhammad Omar, Kemuliaan Ahli Hadith, if I'm not mistaken, the title. And he also composed on Usul Fiqh, Al-Faqih Al-Mutafaqih, in a very unique way that doesn't really follow the way of the Usuliyin of his time, where he composed it based on the Hadith style of writing. And also, of course, Tarikh Baghdad, and the reference for hadith science or hadith criticism, Al-Kifayah fi Usul Ilm al-Riwayah, which is a bit strange when you find that there was no dedicated modern study on Al-Kifayah in the West, when most of the focus on hadith, when most of the studies on hadith focus on the work of Ibn Salah and Ibn Hajar. So there's this missing point, or this gap that we have skipped, so that we need to study more of this period, so that we will have a better picture of hadith criticism, particularly in the Baghdad, in the time of Baghdad.
Fascinating. But okay, so I think we have a visual of Kitab Tarikh Baghdad, and it goes like it's multi-volume. It's about the one of the this is one of the edition. It has like 24 volume, so it's very. But so it's a history of Baghdad, but it
Yes.
goes by another name,
Yeah.
Madinatus Salam. So
Yes.
how would you, maybe you can give us a rundown of this kitab as per your study, but how does it compare to an earlier work? I mean,
Mm.
Abdul Jarir Tabari, who
Yeah.
produced Tarikh Tabari,
Mm-hmm.
because this work, Tarikh Baghdad, it purportedly it is a hadith based
Yes.
history. So maybe you can,
Yeah.
mention to us how far, I mean, into history does Al-Khatib Al-Baghdad go into,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe how does it compare to the earlier
Mm.
Tarikh uh, At-Tabari,
Mm-hmm.
and also the Tarikh works done after Al-Khatib Al-Baghdadi. I seem to remember, yes, you mentioned, one other figure, Ibn Hajar Al-Asqalani, and then
Yeah.
maybe, the much later works,
Yes.
like the works by Ibn Athir, for
Yes.
example.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. First of all, I think
Yeah.
you already noted that the original title was Tarikh Madinat Salam, and of course,
Yes.
uh, I think I have also noted in the email that it should be Tarikh without the Hamza, without the
Uh-huh.
Hamza on the alif, because there's a difference between Tarikh and Tarikh, and
Yes.
Tarikh is more like pensejarahan, whereas
It's
Tarikh is sejarah.
historiography. I think the way of telling
Yeah,
stories, forming a
perhaps.
narrative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's one thing, and the other thing is the best edition that we have at the moment is the critical edition provided or produced by Dr. Bashar Awad Ma'ruf. It's
Yeah.
very rigorous edition of the work.
Mm-hmm.
And we just know, I mean, we just learn about the real Tarikh Madinat Salam or Tarikh Baghdad quite
Baghdad.
recently because of this
Yeah.
this new edition. Because previously there
Yeah.
were like missing biographies in the previous edition. So the picture that you showed, that was not the current edition. You have a better
Yeah.
edition of Tarikh Madinat Salam, and also the name Madinatul Salam is is an interesting name because it tells us a lot about the idea of salam and the city of salam, city of peace. Of course, Baghdad itself, Abu Ja'far al-Mansur said that it will be like the crossroads of the universe. It will be in the future that the multaqa for the alam, that all civilizations will meet at Baghdad. So that's
Mm-hmm.
the round shape of Baghdad. Perhaps been learned. Inspired by early architecture, but the idea of peace in a city, that is very important. And what is the philosophy of peace that you should adopt for a city? And Salam, and you can see that in the Semitic tradition, even the
Yeah.
Jerusalem or Shalim, and also the earlier Malay, Arab Malay governments, I mean Arab Malay sultanates. You have like Kubu
Yeah.
Darussalam, Palembang Darussalam, Aceh Darussalam, Kuntu
Yeah.
Darussalam, and even till today, Patani Darussalam, Brunei Darussalam.
Yeah.
So
Even Brunei,
this
Darussalam.
very very interesting idea of
Yeah.
as-salam that we have to study to look at how urbanization would be related to the philosophy of salam, and of course at the heart of it is Islam.
Yeah. The
Second,
philosophy of peace.
yeah. Secondly, we'll look at. I personally look at the Tarikh Baghdad as trying to portray that how I mean a scholarly area or a discipline um, contributes to the what do you call the development or the enhancement or the betterment of a city. And we can see hadith itself, the scholarship of hadith, and how previously when you have a great figure of hadith visiting a city, people will come and and gather around him. You have like thousands or hundred thousands of students people coming to learn, or even only to see the scholar, even only to learn how he moves. When the Arab would say that samt wal hadyu, his
Yeah.
I mean how I mean the donation and everything. So
Mm-hmm.
coming of a scholar to a city would somehow attract visitors, attract others to also come into to the city. So in a way, it shows how a scholarship can contribute to the development, to the civilization. And uh,
Yeah.
and you can say that hadith was really at the peak during that time, because when you have hadith studies, uh, the learning of hadith thriving in the city, that means that the city is very much lively, it's very much full of scholars, and they have reached like a high level of discussion when they are able to go into like this, or all this technical discussion. So for some people would say that you can't really go into the technical discussion of hadith, except that you
Mm-hmm.
have that preparation. It's
Mm-hmm.
easier to go into like ahkam and everything, but to
Yeah.
to delve into hadith, it requires with a lot of dedication. Al-Khatib himself, he said there's a work on the decorum of students of hadith, and he said that hadith is not learned only by mere instruction, or by just receiving from the past that this hadith is sahih, this hadith is da'if, or this hadith is not really a hadith, but hadith is a light of Allah, uh, given to a servant after a long um, period of training and learning. So
I think there's a saying that
yeah,
knowledge is the light which God
yeah,
places in the heart of the
places in
servants,
yeah,
and other thing, and
yeah,
another saying that says that
yeah,
al-ilm la fi sutur,
yeah, yeah.
al-ilm fi sudur.
Sudor, yeah,
Knowledge
yeah,
is in the
yeah,
hearts and
yeah.
not in the lines of papers.
Yeah, he quoted that, he put that and he what do you call it, quoted Imam Malik on that, Imam Malik, and
Yes.
also the story of Abu Zur'ah, a very well-known story among students of hadith, that ashhadu anna hadha al-ilm ilham, that this ilm, this the ilm of hadith is a sort of ilham, intuitive,
Yeah.
intuition. Not to say that you didn't go for training, for learning the all the technical discussion of hadith, but as Al-Khatib put it, it comes after a long training in the study. So
After having this sort of rigorous preparation.
yes, yes, of course. So you don't go just skip and also and say that this everything is coming from Ilham, but you have to.
Yeah.
I mean, that is another thing that you can learn from Al Khatib. Interestingly, how he showed that both you need both the integration of both of
Yeah.
the intuition and also the logical training. And towards the end of his life, when he left even his possessions, and he said that just distribute it to three groups:
Yeah.
Ashab al Hadith, and the Fuqaha, and the Sufis. Okay? So you have three groups that we can say that he were close to them: the Ashab al Hadith, the Fuqaha, and the Sufis. And some of the classes were held in the Sufi ribats of Baghdad. Some of the
Mm-hmm.
hadith classes, field classes were held. The sessions were held in the ribat of the Sufis. One of them quite close to Jami' al-Mansur, the central mosque of Baghdad, Al-Mansur Central
Mm-hmm.
Mosque.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so what can you give us a rundown? What is, the Tarikh? What are the contents of Tarikh Baghdad?
Okay, yeah, yeah. Because I mentioned just very very brief about the scholarship of hadith, how the
Yes.
scholarship of hadith was portrayed using the tarikh method.
Yeah.
I mean the composition on history, but people would say that it's not really. I mean the history as you would say, the events that occurred in this year, the events that occurred in
Yeah.
this year, who conquered I mean this city or that city. It was more
Yeah.
of a biographical dictionary. Like
Mm-hmm.
you read I mean an account of a person one after another, and he would say that
Yeah.
this person named so and so, or the nisbah, and from whom he received hadith or anything,
Mm-hmm.
accounts or traditions, and who received from him, and the shuyukh and the talamis. That is another point to be highlighted, that people in the past were known by their sheikh and their students.
Mm-hmm.
Credibility. You appreciate the credibility of a person from the shuyukh and the students that he nurtured. Okay? So it's not about his own KPI, but also from whom he learned the tradition and who he managed to nurture. And
So a
also
person is
after that,
also so a person is also evaluated by the long tradition which he carries within himself.
how he associated himself in that network. And in
Sure.
my I mean study of Al-Khatib, I said that he was engaged to three main networks: the network of
Yeah.
تعليقات المزني, all the
Yeah.
Shafi'ites, fuqahas, who learn and produce commentaries on تعليقات al-Muzani. And he was engaged to the network of Hamalatul Hadith, Hamalatul Ilm, the narrators and the transmitters of Hadith. And also
Mm-hmm.
there is another network, that is the network of Sahihain, that is that was in the beginning, the network of Sahihain, and trying to look at Hadith from a different perspective, that is looking at Sahih Hadith. So that's a new phenomenon there.
Yeah.
And coming back to Tarikh Baghdad, so after the shuyukh and talamis, he would mention some of the hadith reported by that person, and towards the end, and when the person died, or the demise of the person.
Right.
So that's I mean the common features of each account in Tarikh Baghdad. But interestingly, because of how Al-Khatib managed to portray scholarship of hadith in Baghdad, and you have to take Baghdad, to imagine Baghdad just as like what we have today. Like, I think I have the quote from Peter Adamson, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
He said that Baghdad rivaled the 5th century Alexandria, the 13th century Paris, and 20th century Oxford. And so you have to imagine that such a big a cosmopolitan, and that capital of civilization, and Al-Khatib managed to uh, bring out like more than 7,000 individuals
Mm-hmm.
engaging actively in hadith scholarship. And so imagine how that contribution portrayed or place the scholarship of hadith, that he said, my scholarship is about to contribute to hadith, where others have done many things to fiqh. And I would like also to say that there was demonstrate, I mean, to illustrate the what do you call it, the virtue of, I mean, the status of Tarikh Baghdad. And one of the
Yeah.
earlier scholar, Ibn al-Banna, he asked, you know, did Al-Khatib mention me in his Tarikh amongst the trustworthy, or the trustworthy narrators, or amongst the liars? And it was said to him that he didn't mention you at all. He didn't mention you in the
Oh.
Tarikh Baghdad. And he said that,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I wish he mentioned me even amongst the kadhabin, amongst the liars, because people even want to be inside, to be included in Tarikh Baghdad. Yeah,
I
that
see.
how the impact of Tarikh Baghdad to
Mm-hmm.
to people working, or engaging in scholarship, particularly scholarship of hadith. Yeah.
Fascinating. So we don't have a lot of time. I think that's a nice tanja that you're wearing, Dr. Husaini, by the way.
Yeah.
So as a conclusion, maybe, why do you think that this work deserves to be, deserve to be read in today's, situation now? It's fascinating that you should mention how the study of hadith brought in, so many scholars, and it happened in the city Madinah to Salam.
Mm.
In the city where the ordinances or the responsibilities, religious responsibilities, are supposed to be carried out, and not in the fringes or in the countryside, but the city is the heart of religious activities. I think, yeah.
Oh, okay. So
What's your conclusion? Yeah, I think.
yeah, in a way, in Tarikh Madinah Salam, when you look at it, the structure,
Yeah.
maybe like the introduction, all the information concerning Baghdad, the architecture of Baghdad would be interesting to read,
Yeah.
for continuous reading. But when you come to the biographical accounts, I think it is not that interesting to have it as like continuous reading. It's meant for reference, that when you need
Mm-hmm.
sort of
Yeah.
reference for a particular figure, then you go for that.
So it's a specialist
That's it.
work.
Yeah. So I
All
mean,
right.
I myself, I didn't read Tarikh Baghdad from the beginning to the end. And by the way, my research was not on Tarikh Baghdad; it was more on the epistemological framework of Al-Khatib Al-Baghdadi. I focus mainly on the Hadith scholarship and Hadith criticism. But of course,
All right.
Tarikh Baghdad will be included because it's the study of a certain area of scholarship would involve the study of the history of that scholarship as well. So Tarikh Baghdad is the one that provide the history for that scholarship, uh, including the encounter between hadith and fiqh, hadith and Sufism, and different sects and groups and trends in Baghdad, where you have to understand and to be able to what do you call it, to imagine what happened in the past in Baghdad. Of course, you will see different mosques with different madhabs in one city. You have like the mosque for the Hanbalite, the mosque for the Shafi'ite, and the mosque for even the Rafidah. Okay? And when you read the Tarikh, you find that it's sort of a city with a plurality
Mm-hmm.
appreciated in that city, and also that not only the plurality but the tensions, and what happened for Al-Khatib himself. He was um, how to put it, he faced many difficulties
Yeah.
from those who disagree with him. uh,
Mm-hmm.
Famously, people will say that that Al-Khatib, uh, the Hanafites, Hanafis who would respond to it. But interestingly, I didn't find that the Hanafis respond to him during his lifetime. It was the
Mm-hmm.
Hanbalis who responded to Al-Khatib during his lifetime. So he was famous for the biography of Abu Hanifa, that is quite controversial. But when I read his how do I put it, his wordings, it was not as understood by many for his stance towards Abu Hanifa. He just like reported what others have said about Abu Hanifa, but his
All right.
main quotation was with the Hanbalite. So that how Tarikh Baghdad concluded and gathered all these different differences and varieties inside a book.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Khairil Husaini,
Yeah, welcome.
for sharing with us today. So, to our listeners and viewers, that was Dr. Khairil Husaini bin Jamil, Assistant Professor Abdul Hamid Abu Sulaiman Kuliah of Islamic Revealed Knowledge and Human Sciences, International Islamic University, Malaysia, IIUM, who shared it with us about Al-Khatib Al-Baghdadi's Tarikh Baghdad. So until next time, I thank you, and we'll see you later. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Assalamu alaikum.